My sister burned my wedding dress to ruin the day. But my revelation stunned her. I knew something was wrong the moment I stepped into the bridal suite. The air was thick with the acrid scent of burnt fabric, and a strange silence filled the room. My bridesmaids stood frozen, their faces pale, eyes wide with shock. My heart pounded in my chest as I followed their gaze. And then I saw it. My wedding dress. Or at least what was left of it. A pile of ashes and charred silk lay on the floor. The delicate lace I had once adored now reduced to blackened scraps. My hands trembled as I took a step closer, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. Then I heard it. A slow mocking clap. I turned, my blood running cold. There she was. My sister. Lily leaned lazily against the vanity, arms crossed, a smirk playing on her lips. Her eyes sparkled with something dark, something triumphant. "Oops," she said, her voice dripping with fake innocence. "Looks like your perfect little wedding is ruined." Something inside me snapped. I clenched my fists, trying to steady my voice. "You did this." Lily tilted her head, pretending to consider. "Well, I didn't not do it." I could feel my bridesmaids watching, waiting for me to explode, to break down, to fall apart. But I wouldn't give Lily that satisfaction. Not today. Taking a deep breath, I straightened my spine and met her gaze head-on. "You know," I said slowly, "I wasn't going to tell you today. I wanted to keep this a happy occasion." Lily rolled her eyes. "Oh, spare me the speech." I smiled, a slow, knowing smile. "All right then. I'll get straight to the point. You're not my real sister." Her smirk vanished. For the first time, real confusion flickered in her eyes. "What?" I stepped closer, lowering my voice just enough to make her lean in. "You're adopted, Lily. Mom and Dad never told you. But I think deep down you always knew, didn't you?" She let out a breathless, nervous laugh. "That's a lie." I shrugged. "Is it?" Her hands trembled. She searched my face, desperate for any sign that I was joking, that this was just another one of our fights. But I saw it the moment the truth clicked. The moment she realized that I wasn't lying. The color drained from her face. I turned to my bridesmaids. "Get me another dress. We have a wedding to attend." And as I walked past Lily, leaving her drowning in the truths, I smiled. She had tried to destroy my day, but I had just destroyed her entire world. Lily didn't move. She just stood there, her mouth slightly open, her breath coming in shallow gasps. The confidence, the smugness gone. I didn't stop to watch her unravel. I had a wedding to attend. "Emma, grab my phone," I said to my maid of honor. "I need to make a call." She nodded quickly and handed it to me. As I dialed, my other bridesmaids were already whispering amongst themselves, throwing glances at Lily, who still hadn't said a word. I walked toward the balcony, pressing the phone to my ear. "Hey Mom. Where are you?" Her voice was warm but hesitant. "We're on our way, sweetheart." "What's wrong?" I glanced back at Lily, who was now gripping the edge of the vanity like she might collapse. "We have a problem. And I think it's time for the truth." There was a long silence on the other end, then a heavy sigh. "She found out, didn't she?" I closed my eyes, my fingers tightening around the phone. "Not exactly. I told her." A sharp inhale. "Oh honey. I didn't have a choice, Mom. She burned my wedding dress." Silence. Then a voice I barely recognized, small, guilty, maybe even ashamed. "I didn't know," Lily whispered. I turned. She was staring at me, her eyes wet with something I had never seen before, fear. I lowered the phone. "Didn't know what?" Lily swallowed hard, her arms wrapping around herself like she was trying to hold her body together. "That I wasn't really your sister." Her voice cracked on the last word. She shook her head, blinking rapidly. "I was just angry. I wanted to hurt you. I thought if I ruined your wedding I could finally." "Finally what?" I asked, my voice softer now. Her chin trembled. "Finally feel like I won." My stomach twisted. I had spent years believing Lily hated me, that she wanted to make my life miserable for no reason other than pure jealousy. But standing there watching her fall apart, I realized the truth. She wasn't just angry. She was lost. She had spent her whole life feeling like an outsider, and she hadn't even known why. I exhaled slowly, forcing down the mix of emotions swirling in my chest. "Mom and Dad are on their way." They'll tell you everything. Lily's lips parted like she wanted to argue, to lash out, but then she just nodded. I turned to Emma. Call the boutique. I need a new dress. And just like that, the moment was over. The wedding wasn't ruined. The day wasn't lost. My sister, though, she was. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I wanted to see her find her way back. The boutique sent over a dress within an hour. Not the one I had dreamed of, but beautiful enough to walk down the aisle in. My bridesmaids helped me change, their hands careful yet quick, whispering reassurances that today would still be perfect. Lily stayed in the corner silent, her eyes hollow, watching but saying nothing. When my parents arrived, their faces lined with worry, she didn't even look up. Is it true? She finally asked, her voice barely audible. Mom hesitated, glancing at me before nodding. We wanted to tell you when you were ready. Lily let out a breathless, bitter laugh. I was never ready. The weight of her words lingered heavy between us, but I couldn't carry it today, not now. I had a fiancé waiting for me at the altar. A new life about to begin. We'll talk after, I said, brushing past her. Outside, the music played, guests rose, and as I took my father's arm, I forced myself to smile. But even as I walked toward the man I loved, I felt it. A shift. A fracture between my sister and me that neither fire nor truth could ever undo. The ceremony was beautiful, almost dreamlike, but beneath the vows and the soft glow of candlelight, my mind kept drifting back to Lily. As I slipped the ring onto my husband's finger, I caught a glimpse of her at the very back of the crowd, standing alone, her arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to disappear. When the guests erupted in cheers, she didn't clap. When I turned to walk down the aisle with my husband, she was already gone. The reception buzzed with laughter, clinking glasses and dancing, but an unease settled in my chest. She had tried to destroy my day, and yet all I could think about was the look on her face when she realized the truth. Late into the night, when the party had faded and my new husband had fallen asleep beside me, I checked my phone. A single unread message from Lily stared back at me. I'm soda. I don't know who I am anymore. I stared at the screen for a long time before typing back. Maybe it's time to find out. Then, without waiting for a reply, I turned off my phone, placed it on the nightstand and closed my eyes. Today I had gained a husband, but I wasn't sure if I had lost a sister. Days passed, then weeks, and Lily didn't reach out. I told myself I didn't care, that I had a new life to focus on. But her absence lingered like an unfinished sentence. My parents called, worried. She won't talk to us, Mom said one evening. She's shutting us out. I wanted to say maybe now she knows how it feels, but the words felt too cruel even after everything she had done. One night, as I was unpacking the last of my wedding gifts, my phone buzzed. A message. Can we meet? I stared at the screen, my fingers hesitating over the keyboard before I finally typed. Where? An hour later, I found myself at a quiet cafe, my stomach twisting as I spotted her at a corner table. She looked different, smaller somehow, like the weight of the truth had hollowed her out. She didn't smirk when she saw me, didn't roll her eyes, just looked up with tired red-rimmed eyes and whispered, I don't know how to fix this. I sat down across from her, exhaling slowly. Neither do I. Silence stretched between us, filled with 1,000 things unsaid. Then, for the first time in our lives, we put down our weapons and simply talked. We sat there for hours, our coffee growing cold as we peeled back years of resentment, layer by layer. Lily admitted what I had always suspected. She had spent her whole life feeling like she didn't belong. Like there was an invisible wall between her and the rest of us. I thought if I could just beat you at something, anything, I'd finally feel real, she whispered, staring down at her trembling hands. But no matter what I did, I was always second. Always the outsider. I swallowed the lump in my throat, the bitterness I had carried for years warring with the realization that maybe she had been hurting just as much as I had. You didn't have to destroy me to find yourself, Lily, I said, my voice softer than I expected. She let out a shaky breath. I know. And I'm sorry. For everything. For the first time I believed her. It didn't erase the past, didn't fix the scars we had left on each other. But maybe, just maybe, it was the start of something new. A truce fragile as glass but real. As we walked out of the cafe, the night air cool against my skin, she hesitated. So what now? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time I didn't see my enemy. I saw my sister. We figure it out, I said simply. And for the first time in years she smiled. Months had passed since that fateful day, and life had slowly started to piece itself back together, one day at a time. The scars of the past weren't gone, not entirely. The truth about Lily's adoption hung between us like a delicate thread, fragile yet binding. But we were learning how to breathe around it, how to exist in a space that wasn't defined by rivalry or resentment. Lily still visited, though not as often as I'd imagined. She wasn't quite ready to jump back into the role of sister, and I wasn't sure how much of that was because of me or her own internal struggles. But each time she came by, it was a little easier. A little more like the relationship we should have had all along. And I was patient. I had to be. One evening, as the sun dipped low in the sky and the air turned crisp with the promise of autumn, Lily called me. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice quieter than usual. I agreed without hesitation and met her at the park where we had first spoken after my wedding. The same bench, the same sense of finality between us, but this time it felt different. There was no anger, no bitterness, just an openness that neither of us had been able to offer before. Lily looked at me with a nervous smile, her hands tucked tightly in the pockets of her jacket. She was thinner than I remembered, her cheeks a little more hollow. "I've been thinking a lot lately. About everything." I nodded, trying to give her space without pushing too hard. "I'm listening." "I want to know more," she said, her voice barely audible. "About my real family. I mean, I have you and Mom and Dad, but I don't know. I just feel like I've been living with half a story for so long, and I don't want to feel lost anymore." Her words settled between us like something both heavy and fragile. I understood. I had spent my entire life knowing my place, knowing where I belonged. But for Lily, it had always been a question mark. A void. "I think that's something only you can explore," I said gently. "But you don't have to do it alone, Lily." She bit her lip, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "I don't know how to start. What if they don't want me? What if it's too late?" I reached out and placed a hand on hers, offering the reassurance I hadn't known how to give her before. Maybe it's never too late. And maybe they won't have all the answers you're looking for. But you don't have to carry that weight by yourself anymore. We're family. And I'm here. Lily squeezed my hand, her smile fragile but real. "Thank you." I knew that what she was asking for, what she needed, wasn't something I could give her. But perhaps for the first time, I could help her find the courage to look for it herself. Maybe that was the beginning of true healing. Not just for her but for both of us. We sat in silence for a long while after that, the sound of the wind rustling through the trees filling the gaps between us. And though there were still so many things left unsaid, so many pieces of our lives that didn't quite fit together, for the first time it felt like we were on the same side. For the first time I felt like I had my sister back. And maybe, just maybe, we could both learn to live with the truth without letting it destroy us. The weeks that followed were a quiet kind of progress. Lily took small steps toward understanding herself, toward learning who she really was outside the shadow of the family she had always known. She started researching her biological family, her history, anything that could answer the questions that had been haunting her for so long. I watched from the sidelines, letting her navigate that journey on her own terms. Sometimes she'd share bits and pieces with me, small revelations like finding out that her birth mother had been a teacher, or that her biological father had a love for music just like she did. Each piece of the puzzle, though small, seemed to give her more peace. She didn't yet know them, but with each story she uncovered, it felt like she was coming closer to understanding herself. There were moments of uncertainty, times when I could see her slipping into that old feeling of being lost. But this time, I didn't let her hide it. I stayed close. Not as a perfect sister, but as someone who, after all these years, was finally willing to show up. It wasn't always easy. Sometimes I resented that I had to share her with her past, that the Lily I knew was being redefined in front of me. But I reminded myself that she wasn't leaving me behind. She was just finding pieces of herself that had always been missing. And then one night, just as the sky turned dark and the first stars began to appear, Lily called me. "I think I'm ready," she said, her voice trembling with an emotion I couldn't quite place. "I found them. I want to meet them." My heart skipped a beat. I knew this moment had been coming. but hearing her say it out loud made it so real. Are you sure? It's a big step. I'm sure, she said firmly. I don't want to live with the what ifs anymore. I need to know who they are. And maybe who I am because of them. I felt a lump form in my throat. I didn't want to admit it, but the thought of losing her to them, of her finding a new family and new connections stared me. But I knew it was something she needed to do. I'll be with you, okay? I'm here, I promised, even if I wasn't sure how I would feel after it all. She let out a shaky breath, and I could hear the uncertainty in her voice, but there was something else too. A quiet resolve. Thank you. The day came sooner than I expected. Lily had arranged to meet her birth mother first. The whole thing felt surreal, like something out of a movie. I drove her to the meeting place and we sat in the car, parked just outside a small cafe. I could see the anxiety written all over her face, her fingers nervously twisting a strand of her hair. You don't have to do this alone, I said again, though I knew she was already as ready as she would ever be. Lily smiled, though it was small. I know. But this is something I need to face on my own. I get it, I said, squeezing her hand for reassurance. Just remember I'm here. I'm always here. She nodded and opened the door, stepping out of the car and walking toward the cafe. I stayed behind watching her go. As she crossed the street and disappeared into the cafe, my chest tightened with a mix of hope and dread. Would this be the reunion she had imagined? Would it give her the answers she needed? I sat there for what felt like an eternity, lost in my thoughts, trying to quiet the fears that threatened to overwhelm me. But just as I was about to leave and check on her, I saw her walking back toward me, her head down, her shoulders slumped. I stepped out of the car, heart in my throat. Lily, she met my gaze, her face pale. Her eyes were wide, distant, as if she had just returned from somewhere deep and unknown. Slowly, she walked up to me, her lips trembling as she tried to find her words. I don't know what I was expecting, she whispered, tears threatening to spill over. It wasn't like I thought it would be. My heart clenched. What happened? She shook her head, her hands shaking. I don't know. It wasn't like in the movies, you know? I thought we'd hug, and it would be all perfect, but it wasn't. It was awkward. She's a stranger. I don't know her, and she doesn't know me. It's just empty. I stepped forward, pulling her into an embrace. I'm so sorry, Lily. I thought it would fix everything. I thought if I found them, I'd find the missing piece of me. Her voice cracked. But now I just feel more lost. I held her tighter, my heart breaking for the pain I had seen building up inside her for years. You're not lost, Lily. You're right here. And I'm here. You don't need to find yourself in someone else. You've already come so far. She stayed in my arms for a long while, the night air cool around us. The tension slowly left her body, and I could feel the weight of her disappointment begin to lift, even if just a little. Eventually, she pulled away, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. I think I just needed to see them, to know that it wasn't going to fix everything, that I could be okay even without them. You're more than okay, I said, my voice firm, reassuring. And no matter what happens with them, I'm still your sister. Always will be. Lily looked up at me, her eyes still glassy but filled with something new. Understanding, maybe. Thank you for not giving up on me. I'll never give up on you, Lily. Never. And as we walked back to the car together, I realized that while Lily had been searching for answers in the past, she had already found something important in the present, herself. And with time, maybe that was enough for both of us. The days after that meeting were quieter, more introspective. Lily didn't rush to call or text her biological mother again, and I could tell she was still processing everything. The weight of the encounter had settled in her mind, and the stark contrast between expectation and reality was still fresh. But there was a small shift in her, a subtle change. As if, in the midst of her uncertainty, she was beginning to accept the reality that she didn't need to have all the answers to feel whole. I noticed it in the way she spoke, the way she carried herself. Less like someone desperately searching for something to define her, and more like someone learning to be at peace with the pieces of herself she already had. And then, one evening, when the sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, Lily asked me a question that made my chest tighten. Do you think we'll ever really be sisters like we were supposed to be? She asked softly, her voice vulnerable as she sat beside me on the porch. The air had the crisp bite of early autumn, and the scent of falling leaves lingered in the wind. I turned to look at her, her eyes searching mine for reassurance, for something to cling to. I thought for a moment, the weight of her question sinking deep into me. "I think we are," I said slowly. "Not because we fit a perfect idea of what sisters are supposed to be, but because we're still here. And we're still trying, even after everything." Lily gave a small, hesitant smile, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "I guess we've been trying for a long time, haven't we?" I nodded, feeling the sting of everything that had happened between us. The years of tension, the fights, the misunderstandings. It had been a long road, and it wasn't over. But I also knew that, despite the distance we'd put between each other, we had both come a long way. "We'll figure it out," I said quietly, my hand resting on her shoulder in a rare moment of comfort. "Even if it takes time." Lily's smile this time was a little more genuine, though tinged with uncertainty. "I want to try, you know? I don't want to keep pushing you away. I don't know how." "You're not alone in that," I replied, my voice firm. "It's been hard for both of us. But that doesn't mean we can't get there. Maybe not all at once, but step by step. Together." She leaned back in her chair, letting out a breath she didn't know she had been holding. "I hope so. I really do." We sat in silence for a while, the fading light of the day casting a soft glow on everything around us. I realized in that moment that what we were doing wasn't just about rebuilding a relationship that had been damaged. It was about building a new one without expectations, without assumptions about what we were supposed to be. It was about learning to accept each other, not as perfect sisters, but as imperfect people trying to figure it out together. A few weeks later, on a lazy Sunday afternoon, I received a text from Lily. She had been quiet for a while, focused on her work, on her own healing. But this message felt different. "Do you want to come over for dinner tonight? Just us." I paused, surprised. It wasn't much, just a simple invitation, but it felt significant. "Of course," I typed back. "I'd love to." That evening, I arrived at her apartment to find her in the kitchen, humming softly as she stirred something on the stove. It was a quiet scene, nothing extraordinary, just two sisters, sharing a meal in the most ordinary way. But in that moment, it felt like the most extraordinary thing. She had made dinner from scratch, something she'd never done before. As I sat down at the table, I marveled at how much had changed in the last few months. We had both come to understand that family wasn't just about shared blood. It was about shared moments, trust, and growth. "I wasn't sure if you'd come," Lily said quietly as she set the plate in front of me, her voice laced with an unspoken apology. "I'll always come," I said, meeting her gaze with a steady, unwavering look. We ate together, and for the first time in a long time, there was no tension between us. Just quiet conversation, laughter, and the warmth of being in the same room, sharing a simple meal. And though I knew our journey wasn't over, there would still be challenges, still things to work through. Something in that moment made me believe that maybe we were finally on the right path. That night, as I left her apartment, I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope for the future. Maybe we wouldn't ever be the perfect picture of sisterhood. Maybe we would always have scars, things that were never fully healed. But we were here, trying, learning, and making peace with the fact that family wasn't just a title. It was something we built together. And perhaps in time, we would find that we didn't need to be perfect. We just needed to be present. The weeks that followed continued with a slow but steady sense of progress. Lily and I, now having a new understanding of each other, took tentative steps toward building a new relationship. One that wasn't dictated by old expectations or the ghosts of the past. Sometimes we still stumbled, caught in old habits, but we didn't let the missteps define us. Every moment was a chance to rewrite our story. One chilly evening in December, Lily invited me over to her apartment again, this time for a holiday gathering. It was a small thing, just the two of us, a few friends, and my parents. It wasn't going to be a grand family celebration, but I couldn't help but feel that it meant something. A quiet kind of celebration, a new beginning. As I walked in, I was greeted by the scent of cinnamon and pine, the warmth of string lights flickering in the corners, and the soft sound of a Christmas playlist in the background. It was a stark contrast to the chaos of the past, and for the first time, I felt a genuine sense of peace in Lily's space. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't what I had once imagined a family holiday would be, but it was real. And that was enough. "Hey, you made it." Lily greeted me with a smile that seemed less guarded than it had been in the past. A smile I had grown to recognize as one of real warmth. She had set up a small table in the corner with homemade cookies, a bottle of wine, and a few candles flickering in the dim light. "I wouldn't miss it," I said, taking in the cozy setup. "It looks amazing in here." "Thanks," she said, her voice soft but filled with a kind of pride I hadn't heard from her before. "I wanted it to feel, well, not perfect, but like it's ours. Like we're finally starting something new." I smiled, feeling a lump form in my throat. We weren't pretending to be anything we weren't. We weren't trying to recreate some ideal version of the holidays. This was our version. Simple, quiet, but full of meaning. As the evening wore on, we talked more, laughed more. My parents arrived, and though there was an undercurrent of awkwardness at first, especially between Lily and my mom, it soon dissolved as we all shared stories, drank wine, and ate cookies. My mom gave Lily a soft smile as they exchanged pleasantries, and though there was still some space between them, it felt like something had shifted. "I'm really glad you invited me," my mom said quietly to Lily, her voice warm. "I know it's been a long road, but I want you to know that I'm proud of you. I've seen how hard you've worked to find yourself, and I admire your strength." Lily looked down at her lap, her fingers nervously twisting the napkin in her hands. "Thanks, Mom. I'm trying." "You're not alone," Mom said softly, her voice full of sincerity. "We're all here for you, and always will be." I saw Lily's eyes flicker with something I hadn't seen before. Hope, maybe even a hint of vulnerability. "I know," she said quietly, lifting her gaze to meet my mom's. "And I'm starting to realize that maybe that's all I really need." It was a small moment, a quiet exchange, but it felt monumental. We had spent years lost in our own pain, circling each other, never quite able to reach out. But tonight, something had shifted in the air. We weren't healed yet, not by a long shot. But we were trying. And that was enough for no. As the evening drew to a close, Lily stood up to turn off the music, and for the first time she didn't look over her shoulder, uncertain if it was okay. She simply did it, as if she were claiming a space for herself in the room, in the family. I watched her, a sense of pride swelling in my chest. "You did good, you know," I said, stepping up beside her as she closed the playlist on her phone. She turned to me, raising an eyebrow. "You think so?" "I know so," I said, feeling the weight of my words. This is something real. And we're doing it together." Lily gave me a smile, genuine, unguarded. A real reflection of where she was at that moment. "I'm glad you're here." "I'll always be here," I replied, my voice firm but soft with the promise that had taken years to make. "We'll figure it out. Together." And as I left her apartment that night, the air crisp with the first signs of winter, I felt a new kind of peace. Maybe it wasn't the kind of sisterhood I had imagined when we were kids. Maybe it wasn't perfect. But it was ours, and it was enough. I didn't know what the future held for Lily and me. I didn't know if we would continue to move forward in harmony, or if we would face new challenges. But I knew that, for the first time in a long time, we weren't alone in the journey. We had each other, and that was something worth holding on to. And maybe, just maybe, that was the greatest gift of all. As the months passed, life continued to unfold in ways I never expected. Lily and I didn't magically fix everything, and there were days when it felt like we were still finding our footing, like we hadn't quite figured out how to leave the past behind. But there were also small, beautiful moments that made me believe in the possibility of change. A shared coffee on a quiet morning, a message just to check in, a real conversation about our lives, our hopes, and our fears. Each one felt like a stitch in the fabric we were slowly, carefully weaving together. But there was one evening in early spring that I realized how far we'd come. It was just before my birthday, and Lily had texted me with a simple message. "Can I make you dinner? I want to do something nice for you." First, I was surprised. It wasn't a grand gesture. No big celebrations or gifts, but something about the offer felt different. It felt genuine, like Lily was finally seeing me. Not just as her older sister, but as someone she wanted to care for. It wasn't about fixing everything overnight. It was about showing up. About trying. I arrived at her apartment a little early, just as the smell of something delicious wafted from the kitchen. She was standing by the stove, her back to me, focused on what she was cooking. There was a calmness in the air. No rushing, no tension. Just the quiet sound of her moving around, preparing something from scratch for me. I watched her for a moment, letting the warmth of the scene sink in. For so long I'd been waiting for some kind of grand reconciliation. But now I understood that these simple moments was where the real healing happened. She turned, catching my gaze. Her eyes softened and a small, uncertain smile tugged at the corners of her mouth. "I hope you're hungry." "I am," I said with a laugh. "It smells amazing." We ate together that night, laughing at old inside jokes, talking about our childhood memories, and sharing the stories that had shaped us into the people we were now. There was no pretension, no tension between us. Just two sisters finding their way through the messiness of life. When dinner was over, we sat on her couch sipping wine, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely at ease with Lily. Not because everything was perfect, but because for once I wasn't trying to fix anything. We were simply existing together as we were, and that felt like enough. Later, as I was about to leave, she handed me a small wrapped box. "Happy early birthday," she said, her voice soft, the words holding a tenderness I hadn't expected. I opened the box slowly. Inside was a delicate bracelet, simple, elegant, but with a meaning that reached far beyond its beauty. There was a small charm attached, a heart intertwined with the ribbon. I thought, maybe this could be a symbol of us, Lily said quietly, watching my reaction. "I know we've been through a lot, but maybe this is a reminder that, no matter what, we're still sisters. And we always will be." My heart swelled at her words. It wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was a promise, a tangible symbol of all the healing we had done, and all that was still to come. "I love it," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "Thank you." As I left her apartment that night, my heart felt lighter than it had in years. We had come so far, and while there was still so much to navigate, I felt hopeful for the future. It wasn't about erasing the past or pretending things hadn't happened. It was about moving forward together, one day at a time. And as I walked down the street, feeling the soft breeze on my face and the weight of the bracelet on my wrist, I realized that sometimes, the most unexpected and broken relationships could still bloom into something beautiful. Didn't need to be perfect, just real. And that was enough. I didn't know what the future would hold, but for the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be, with my sister.